Well, hello. How you doing? I have something a little bit different today that I'm going to share. Really, a personal experience event, if you will. And so, I'm going to tell you a story about two different kinds of people. One person is arrogant and hysterical, and the other is down to earth and charming. There's an Eastern proverb that I fairly often quote and post, and it goes something like this: merchants need to guard themselves from their greed, and scholars from their arrogance. At the beginning of last week, I was busy getting ready for a joyous occasion, and that occasion was my daughter's wedding. I was going to give her away. Just before I left, I checked Facebook, and one of my friends, quote unquote friends, posted a glowing review of a new movie called The Odyssey. I wrote two words, quote unquote, woke movie. For those two words, this guy wrote that I was dumb and wrong, and I responded, quote, incorrect, see the book and the script, unquote. That was it. I figured the conversation was over, and I really didn't expect a response from him. But he jumped into my PMs, my private messages, and told me never to post on his public Facebook again. He called me more insulting names and then told me to get lost. One of the most astonishing things about all this is this guy did not know that the movie in question was based by a book by a left-wing woke academic female whose intent in writing the said book was to, quote, smash the patriarchy, unquote. For someone presenting himself as an intellectual and an academic, he did little research on this topic, but was confident in his knowledge and expertise. I admittedly responded as any man would with such treatment, especially given his comments were public. I told him the polite way to explain this is I told him to pound sand. Probably not the best possible response, but after numerous insults, I was done. And we all reach that point, I think, with other people who are unreasonable and aren't interested in actual, honest conversation. At some point, a man has to cut people out of their life, especially other so-called men who really are not. Reasonable men can disagree, but he wanted submission and for me to genuflect to his faulty intellect, and I would have neither of that, actually. Not that I was actually think a lot of my intellect, but that on this factual point, he was wrong. And you can't have discussions with anybody who don't even understand the facts. They're intransigent. And to be honest with you, he acted like any leftist would in this regard. But anyway, I never thought another thing about this event. While it was sort of regrettable, the person has a history of acting this way that I interacted with on Facebook, and he considers many people his inferior. So he really wasn't a friend. Now, you might call an online friend, not even an acquaintance. Usually I kept my distance from this guy because I've known him for a long time, when not just online. And he talks about people behind their back all the time. When they're not around, of course, he talks about other people, not in a good way. In other words, he is the classic person who talks about people behind their back. So I really didn't care that he got all pissy at my disagreement with him. That's his way. The biggest and probably most astonishing fact in all of this is that this person is allegedly a self-identified conservative academic type. But his behavior defending woke academics and also not tolerating mild and respectful disagreement says something about him. But Also about our current politics, which is pretty scrambled. None of this first part of the story is about him, nor is the second part of the story about him. It's not about the insults. It's not about personal relationships. It's about people. The names and the specific grievances to me really don't matter. And as I said, I could really care less that this friendship is over with. Certainly, I'm not going to give him another chance. This was his second chance. The purpose of relating this story is the contrast of people that I met at what I initially started out in this little video about the wedding, and especially the wedding party. The wedding party was chosen by the groom and the bride, so my daughter being the bride. It was small. It was probably about 50 people in all. And they purposely chose it that way. In fact, the groom, during the night of the reception, said that they chose this wedding party to be small because it was their closest friends. In other words, it consisted of their circle of friends plus the parents. And that circle was tight. I was impressed by all of this. I've never seen anything like this. Even in academics. Usually you don't see this type of thing in academics. People are in higher ed, and it doesn't matter the party. Left, right, Republican, Democrat, Socialist, whatever. They're not very congenial with others. They don't like to play nice with others. Everybody's always guarded. Because the scraps from the table are so minuscule and everybody's fighting for the same pie. But they're not very good at really close friendships. Some may say they have friends and whatnot, but having real close friendships is very rare. But I was impressed by all of the people in the wedding party, to be honest with you. They were joyous, kind, not at all full of themselves. They could hold a conversation about real things and, oh my gosh, handle disagreements. Of course, it goes without saying they were not academics. They were also pretty self-reflective, not arrogant. There were no pretensions of intellect. They were what I would call normal people. They all had real jobs. And even though some were educated, I'm not precisely sure if anybody had an advanced degree. But although they were educated, they never clothed themselves in their arrogance of that said education that they brought with them. It was probably because they were what you might call salt of the earth people. They had real jobs. The wedding was on the beach, and the reception was at one of the oldest bars in the state. The clientele of that bar, aside from the wedding party, were all millennial and Gen Z. The wedding party was held at a sort of event center that was more or less attached to the bar. But I could peek over the fence and see all the clientele that came outside to smoke. This bar was also one of the last bars in the entire United States, and I think maybe it was the last, to ban smoking inside. So outside they had a long, nice outdoor area where the music from the inside carried into the outside area. And I peeked over the fence from the event space that we were staying in that was also owned by the bar. And they were all, well, everybody out there who was smoking was one, all male, and two, Gen Z, without a doubt. These were not people who cared about proper social etiquette. They were normal folks normal guys dressed normally, like you would in any real bar. Had a little bit of attitude to that bar, of course, but the fact of the matter is they were all Gen Z. It really made me perk up a bit because what was at the bar was reflective of the wedding party. My wife and I had a blast at all of this. But the experience reminded me of the week and how it started with my pretentious former friend and the normal people I met. Clearly, one kind of company is more desirable than the other. Academics who make that sedentary career their be-all, end-all become a certain kind of person eventually, it seems. I've seen this happen many times now. And they get resentful of others, even to the point of looking down on them. I've recounted this story. This didn't happen in my experience this week, but I have been told several times this would have been from an academic, and I made a video about this. This was about a sort of a center-left academic, actually, who said to me that the college that I was working at the time, that he hated the people that lived in the valley. The college was on a hill. He hated the people that lived in the valley, and our job, he said to me, was to make them in our image. Now, nothing says how much contempt they have for real people than a statement like that. And nothing reveals how full of themselves academics can be than a statement like that. It does not matter, really, what party one belongs to have this sort of sentiment slowly creep into you. They all constantly try to think about how to beg for scraps from the government table and attach themselves to some person who actually has money that can be their benefactor. Aside from a few people whom I've talked about, Angelo Codevilla being one of them and Victor Davis Hanson being the other, they have no discernible skills. What sets Victor Davis Hanson and Angelo Codevilla apart from almost all other academics is the fact that they did something outside of teaching. But this person who attacked me on Facebook, or at least wanted to cause an argument, or became offended at my argument, had no discernible skills and recently left the countryside for Tampa Bay because, as he said to me at one point, living in the country is too remote. Now, people who can't do things, who have no other skills other than reading a book, usually gravitate to the city where their lack of skill is made up by the vast service industry that is compacted into a pretty small space. The cities can be big or small. So, I mean, a small space being compacting what you can into an area. And I think that statement is very sad for humanity and the country, but also for the soul. Because I think that even though you're around a lot more people, it's very lonely, and how lonely that guy must be. But the normal person is pretty quite happy, and the people I met are really quite happy at what they did at the wedding party. They were definitely generous with their time, congenial, gregarious, talkative, accepting, and I don't mean in the sort of left-wing sense, accepting, but just decent folks. And these people are, to me, far more wise than the stodgy academic who reads Plato and or forgets Homer, especially the literal translation of Homer. Meeting all these young kids gave me a lot of joy. I am not so dour about the coming generation as others might be because I have interacted with them on a rather large scale. I don't avoid public places. I'm not online all the time. I like to get out and adventure, and I've met a lot. So, sure, my experience, and even with the wedding party, is anecdotal, absolutely. But are there exceptions to all this? Of course there are. But as we left the reception at 11 p.m., there was a line out the door of the formal bar. So as we left the cordoned off wedding reception event center, there was a real front door to the bar, and the wedding reception had a different entrance. But so as I walked around the corner to just to get to my vehicle, you had to pass the front door to this bar, and the line was down the street. And I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. But what was even more shocking is that every single person in that line, and it was pretty even between men and women, were all Gen Z. Every single one of them. What's even more astonishing about all this is the fact that this bar is an old school bar. It's very popular among the young. It has a long history that dates back to, before Prohibition, but definitely after Prohibition. It has a long tradition. And the people who came to that bar were attracted to that in some way. It's not like they didn't have other bars to choose. They were attracted to this bar, which says something, I think, pretty profound about the generation of Gen Z. It made me smile when I saw that. I've never really seen a line outside anything for a very long time. But that bar, there was a line, and people were waiting to get in. So Gen Z, it seems to me, what made me smile is Gen Z is getting out more. They're leaving behind their screens more and more slowly, and they're engaging others in real time. My daughter is now married and happy, and as we speak, on her honeymoon. It's a wonderful thing to see this whole experience. The last few days, hanging around people and meeting people who were in the wedding party, and meeting their small circle of friends. That small circle of friends was a complete joy. And of course, the marriage I approved of. I approved of the guy. I thought he was a great guy, and I think he will be a great husband. For me, if I could just at least say something particular about giving away a daughter. It's a difficult thing to do. It's difficult for a father to give away a daughter, I think. Probably because there are two opposing things happening inside the father at the same time. One is sadness, in a way. Seeing your little girl grow up and be happy. But there's a happiness, too, involved in such an event. So there's sadness and happiness, at least in my experience on the actual wedding. But in the end, I think a man who knows what it is like to raise children takes pride when he sees children grow up into respectable, happy men and women. My point in all this is not the particulars of the event, but that there's two kinds of people. And I got to experience two different kinds of people. And I'm very hopeful about the younger generation that's coming up. And quite satisfied that my daughter and her husband are happy together. All right, enough from me. Hang loose.
Free, so tell me what's wrong with